it's obviously best practices to start off letting you introduce yourself, as in like, who are you, what you identify as, and you know, within your profession, or even just as a person. So I'll start with Nick.
For sure. Thank you for having me out, by the way. This has always been a fun thing to, I feel like I've been a part of your guys' lives the past 30 years. And for that, I'm going to ask all of you guys to come forward a bit, because I don't know why you guys are so far away. So if you could, let's just take up here, let's stay in the front row, and get really intimate. Because we know each other, right?
Small crowd.
Right? I follow a lot of you guys back on Instagram. That's pretty rare. So, as Antonio mentioned, my name is Nichols. I identify myself as a grown 7-year-old. JK, I am a creative, and my entire life I've kind of navigated this professional capacity as a creative. And so, whatever I felt, literally, as in went with my gut and my heart, was calling me from design to website development to digital strategy. I kind of adhered to that. I kind of listened to my heart and also did the work to understand that craft and those capacities and the language it takes to communicate in those capacities to the point where, as Antonio mentioned, I run a full-service creative digital marketing agency by the name of Palette Group. And what we do there is creative services, so photo, film, and design. And on the marketing side, we do social media marketing, as well as advertising campaigns. And so our work is as simple as getting paid to tweet. Additionally, being paid to looking at a full 360 advertising campaigns where our work is up on billboards on 95. And that's kind of been my career in the past 10 years, is kind of escalating through media, through digital marketing, through advertising, and wherever I feel kind of fit, but also wherever I can get like my creative frills off. And that is a bit of my professional story.
So Amira, do you want to give your pitch as well? Who is Amira Idris?
Yeah, sure. So I'm just doing like a quick introduction of myself. Yeah. So hi everyone. Sorry I wasn't able to make it. The time got a little bit mixed up, and coming from Delaware, it's kind of a long drive with traffic. It's no fun. But I decided that calling in might be the best option. So excuse me if it's a little bit glitchy. So just a quick introduction. My name is Amira Idris. I am the CEO and founder of the startup company TheraV. It was formerly known as Vibrating Therapeutic Apparel. I actually think I came to speak, I'm actually very sure I came to speak at your club last year. I think with 2 or 3 other ladies. And so I think my whole company at that time was Vibrating Therapeutic Apparel, like that was the name. So we got rebranded and everything last year. Now we're TheraV. And basically we're focused on helping people better manage their pain. And I developed a wearable device that started out as a vibrating sock, ended up becoming a vibrating strap now. That's what the final product is. That is worn over the limb. And basically it applies customized vibration therapy to help with pain management. And currently my company is focused on helping people with amputated limbs manage post-amputation pain, such as phantom limb pain, which is basically when one feels ongoing pain in a limb that's no longer there because the brain can't recognize that the limb has been amputated. And unfortunately, that pain can be really severe. That can affect the quality of life of the individual who's experiencing it. And unfortunately, a lot of the alternatives available to help with the pain are not meeting the needs of the amputees. And so we found by, basically prototyping and speaking to prosthetists, amputees, physical therapists, and all other influencers in the amputee space, like what they wanted in sense of pain management. So we ended up developing this wearable device called the E-List. And we're actually planning to distribute some of these devices by the end of the first quarter. So, yeah.
Awesome. So one of the things I thought was very interesting too, just in doing my homework a little bit, you identify as a social entrepreneur. Could you talk a little bit more about that and how that inspires your product design or even the audience you've chosen to focus on within TheraV?
So you want me to talk about social entrepreneurship?
Yeah.
Okay. So basically, I can describe myself as a social entrepreneur, mainly because, for me, what a social entrepreneur is, and it's actually like a broad definition, but basically what it is someone who sees a need in a community, and basically you work towards developing a solution to that, and from developing that solution, you end up creating some kind of business or service out of that. And it's basically a company that is focused around helping the community as a whole, right? A social entrepreneur, your sole purpose isn't just to make money and become a billionaire and then leave everybody in the dust. It's about basically, yeah, make money because you need a living to keep going, but to basically create a device or a service that helps others, right? And I'm right now focused on helping amputees and people who suffer from nerve pain, because again, I saw this unmet need in the community in regards to pain management with the opioid epidemic, and I have a solution that can help with that, and I don't have to be a nonprofit to do so, right? So I could make money doing what I'm doing, but I'm also thinking about the end users as a whole, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I think as well, I see patterns as well in what you do, Nate, too. A lot of community engagement I see within videos and stuff, and also just being around you. That you've interwoven this into your lifestyle or even your day-to-day work. Could you talk a little bit about that, like where you're involved now, or like kind of how you've made it a part of your mission even?
For sure. I like the word lifestyle. I think a lot of times we live our lives trying to compartmentalize our pieces of our identity versus just interweaving aspects of it into our lifestyle. I think we've kind of come under this spell from society that we aren't able to interweave aspects like fitness into our lifestyle and youth engagement or community service into our lifestyles. And so for me personally, I always desired freedom. And once I got a little taste of that, probably in my early 20s, I realized how important the different people, places, and things that gave me that vision and that taste were so important for me to get there. And I decided to take those people, places, and things, like identify of those what I could do to reproduce those into my life. And replicate that in giving youth the same opportunity that I have in showing them lifestyles that they've never seen before, like traveling to wherever you want, or being a creative and creating a business around being a creative, and just making it so there's success is at arm's reach. So I think let's skip high school and go to Soho during the week and go on buying trips and having fun, but learning in real time. And I saw the value in that, and so I wanted to do that and replicate that for youth going forward. And I don't know, it's just fun to see the fire in a young kid's eyes when they realize that they don't have to wait to be a part of the economy. They don't have to wait to take an idea that they have in their head and make it a reality. And so I think that's super important for people to have an example or a case study that they can look to make their life come to fruition, or the vision for life come to fruition faster than they've ever expected.
Yeah, I think it's quite unique, especially to both of you, to see you being able to make time to pay it forward, or just have a consciousness about like the agency you have as an entrepreneur to help others, and kind of bring them into what you're doing. I think something that's unique too. I don't know if you want to speak about it more, even the way you kind of speak about like weaving narratives into it. Like I've seen the presentations, and I wonder how intentional that is, or even I know a little bit more into the identity side of it. Like you talk a lot about the world you come from, and I'm curious too as well for you, Amira, like how much the world you come from or came from still influences how you operate today.
Amira, you want to start?
Can you speak a little louder?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah. So I'm curious to know like how much the world you came from still influences how you go about designing products or experiences today. If you want to dive more into the identity side of yourself as an entrepreneur, or even taking on that label of
I still can't, for some reason I can't hear you. I think you're speaking fast and the mic is...
Dang.
Try without the mic, maybe it was, I could be able to hear it better.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you better now.
That's so wild. So one of the questions I was asking in regards to identity as an entrepreneur, how much of where you come from still influences or has an impact on how you design or create today?
That's a really good question. So in regards to like where I came from and how I grew up. So as a kid, I always wanted to be an engineer, right? So my dad was a civil engineer, and growing up, I always wanted to be an engineer like my dad. I'm a daddy's girl. But instead of building basically like roads and bridges, I actually wanted to build robots. Mainly because my favorite childhood movie growing up was the movie RoboCop. right? And so like I seriously love that movie. I love RoboCop, love Power Rangers, and I was like, oh my gosh, I would love to build things like this in the future. Like that would be so cool, right? And I kind of learned a little bit more about the engineering space, found out how I can do that, then started learning a little bit more about prosthetics. And for me, it was just like I always had the aspiration to be an engineer, to build things, right? I've always been a tinkerer. I like to build things. I like to create. And I just never lost my childlikeness, if that makes sense. Like I still always, even to today, reference my childhood when I try to come up with like ideas. I never stopped playing. I never stopped being creative. Even going through the whole academic atmosphere in college, I still had like that inspiration to be creative. So, that really inspired me to pursue what I was doing. And then as I learned a little bit more about the space, I found that really it was definitely something I was interested in. Then I found this unmet need and created a solution. And for me, again, it was just like my parents basically my dad specifically, inspiring me to pursue this field in the first place. And then, just things that I relate to in childhood. I just never let that, die, because it's what made me very interested in the field in the first place. And it was something I kept pursuing. And for me, it's always like has anyone seen Black Panther? Like raise your hands if Black Panther. Yeah.
Raise your hands if you haven't seen Black Panther.
Yeah, it's like basically I think what Black Panther would be for like a lot of people, like a lot of young kids. That's basically like what RoboCop and Power Rangers were for me. It's like, oh my gosh, really cool technology. I want to build that. Basically, right? So it's basically like just looking at my environment, my surroundings. Like when I watch movies, when I watch TVs, when I watch shows, be it sci-fi, be it fiction, non-fiction, I'm always looking for inspirations to do that, right? It's like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. And if you even look at a lot of the advancement in tech that's been happening in the past couple of years, a lot of them have come from movies, right? So Star Wars movies, like all this really cool health devices that are coming out from inspiration from a Star Wars movie and then Avatar. So it's like basically just looking. There's a lot of like things around you that you get inspired from and come up with ideas, and that's what I do, and that's how I stick with my creativity. It hasn't changed since I was a kid. So.
Yeah, still. On this note, talk about hip hop too.
Talk about hip hop too. I think to right off Amira's points, I think all of what we do is kind of influenced by our identity, and it takes a very conscious and strenuous and mental time investment for you to realize that. I think it's a retrospective thing. I think we try to pretend that we're not our parents and we're not our heritage just because we live in a society that's constantly influencing us, or every time we swipe on a phone or watch a movie like Black Panther or Star Trek. But at the end of the day, these things are influencing our identity to some degree, not 100% of it, but to some. And so if you look back at your life, and I think you'll see some patterns. And for me personally, I grew up in foster care in a very hectic household, meaning when I lived outside of my home, there was chaos and I didn't feel comfortable. And even in my home, there was chaos and I didn't feel comfortable. So for me, the original desire to create on my computer, to do graphic design, was to escape. And so there was a piece of my identity that didn't feel comfortable in the world. And that piece was self-expression, being creative. And so my entire teenage career, adolescent career, was motivated by not having comfort. And so I grew a creative identity because of how uncomfortable I was in the world. And I know it's kind of abstract and very existential, but think about all the things you kind of run away from, but also line up in a great place professionally. But also the things you run away from that make you feel like you have purpose. And so a lot of my identity in my 20s now is running back towards my identity being African American. And so what that means, like taking responsibility for the color of my skin, and a lot of the work I've been doing recently has been around that. And it's entailing what my identity is as an African American in this country. And I'd say even through college, I literally just wanted to become an entrepreneur, and my identity as an entrepreneur was more important to me than my family, than eating at times. Like I would go forego eating in college because I just wanted to be the most savvy entrepreneur Philadelphia had ever seen, right? And I just prioritized aspects of my identity throughout my life that either worked out in my favor or like made me starve, literally. And so I think you're your original question about how much of our identity and our makeup informs what we do every day is everything. And I think you were asking about narratives specifically, so how I draw narratives. That just takes, again, a lot of work. It's very hard to pull these abstract narratives and make them make sense for a crowd of people, especially because you're like sitting down in your own head a lot of the times. And for me, it's a lethargic thing where whatever I'm feeling, I try to extrapolate and create content around. For my clients, it's the same thing. Like all I do as a marketer, as a creative, is try to understand and ask all of the questions and identify different waves and narratives to pull from to create content around. And so the real art and creative direction, or art direction, is how you ask your questions and how you're able to understand what identity means, and just be able to sit across from someone and feel that they may not know what they're talking about, but it's your job to pull it out of them. And once you understand what you can, you kind of have to look at what the audience wants at that point. It's not about you and your ability to make a magical story. It's about your ability to understand what will be magical for the audience. And then you make the story. So what is important to this audience? And that takes work too, to distill those narratives. There's different frameworks for it. I'll give you a recommendation of IDEO. If you guys, anybody ever heard of IDEO?
Yeah. I think we should visit our offices over in Manhattan.
Fantastic. I'm jealous.
Yeah, IDEO.org, the big link.
So they actually save online courses. You drop $500, $300, and you can learn design thinking online. And you can learn how to extrapolate and understand how to take narratives and break them down to make sense for communities based on your audience. And so, yeah, you kind of have to learn at what level to speak to a specific audience. And I don't know if I'm answering your question anymore, but it's hard to figure out what narrative to dive into when you're talking to an audience, and it's just always a challenge.
Yeah, in a way, almost becoming like a DJ to breed crowds, right?
Totally.
Yeah, interesting. Something you spoke of that I'm interested on both of you, spending too much time in your head and that becoming a scary place. Just as much as the world of becoming an entrepreneur is a scary thing. So one of the things I hear often are people may talk about is it being a lonely path. I want to believe that there's some form of balance out there, so I'm curious of the both of you, how have you found that room for balance, or what helps you stay balanced, or you may want to spend 12 hours just working, hard on whatever it is you're doing, but realize too that part of what even allowed that to be was being out in the world. So where do you find that balance?
Did you catch that here?
No, you have to repeat that the microphone.
That was for Nate. This one's for Amira.
You just summarize it for me. To summarize the question, I think
so,
everyone heard it.
I'm curious, knowing that the world of entrepreneurship can be lonely, but also be inspired by being present in the world. How do you find your balance in your life as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I tend to kind of integrate my life as an entrepreneur into my everyday life because it is my life. Though I've had a lot of my mentors and a lot of other entrepreneurs really recommend that I split my personal life from my company. Basically, the whole idea of separating church and state, because sometimes it can get very, very depressing once your company starts to, or you think you perceive your company isn't doing as well as it should be doing. I get depressed. A lot of entrepreneurs suffer from depression. Mainly because it can be very lonely and very stressful, and you just feel like sometimes the whole world's on your shoulder, even though it's not. Because the way I try to think about it is, I'm basically kind of living my dream. Taking this entrepreneurship route was not something I had expected. I would be doing it this time in my life. I just graduated from college 2 years ago. So it's I wasn't expecting to become an entrepreneur at this age. I was thinking I would wait till I was my parents' age, retired, and then I'll start my own company, right? And then this just happened. And so it can get very depressing, but in the end, I'm doing what I love. I'm helping people. So I try to balance the being an entrepreneur and also taking time for myself. Taking, even if it's sometimes I might take a day off just to go outside and walk if the weather is nice, or just to sit down and read a book or stretch or go exercise, because it helps a lot. As a student, you might just have limited time to split, so you kind of integrate it into your student life. I've had instances where before I started my company, before I officially started my company, like established it as an LLC, I actually took my company through my courses, right? So I took Entrepreneurship 101, right? Learned a little bit more about the Lean Startup methodology, the business model canvas, and usually they're looking for ideas to work with. You split in groups and you come up with like an idea to work with. I usually had my company's idea, so it's like, yeah, we'll just work with my company's idea and just do that work, right? So if you have an idea that you want to pursue as an entrepreneur, I think you should definitely try to incorporate it into your current like academic world, right? You have all this limited resources right on campus. You have access to professionals, professors, computers, like all these different things, technology, that is free because you're paying it with your tuition. So I would usually recommend for students to incorporate as much as they can into their schoolwork. And some schools actually give grants to work on business ideas. Even if it's just an idea you haven't put anything on pen and paper yet. You know, a lot of schools give money for that because again, it's this whole movement of entrepreneurship in the United States. So you should definitely look into that. You know, there's summer programs, accelerators, incubators that you can do to incorporate it into like your, you know, kind of everyday life in a sense. But as a student, that's something I would definitely recommend.
Yeah, once you said that, I'll shamelessly plug Blackstone. We haven't spent time in the office speak to it. I had the opportunity to actually take advantage of those resources and go to California on Blackstone's dime. So just sprinkling it out there. One of the things you mentioned that was kind of interesting was running your, you know, your job is kind of state, running your company through like your schooling. And I noticed even on LinkedIn, you kind of mentioned May of 2016 as like the actual beginning, and like timing being a part of it. Like, was that intentional to choose? Like, that's when you took it serious, or that's when you felt like you could officially make the full investment on what you were doing?
That's actually a very interesting question. As I mentioned, this was not a path I thought I would take. I seriously thought I would graduate college, go into industry for a year, then go get my graduate degree, either a PhD or a master's. Or just graduate and go get my graduate degree or PhD or a master's. I was not planning to start a company, right? It's just that I was very fortunate that I was very curious about entrepreneurship. I didn't know what it was. Like, what's this entrepreneurship thing? Was a tech collective for it? So I took it. So I had this idea when I was a junior undergrad at the University of Delaware, my junior year. And as an engineer, back then, they didn't teach you how to take your idea into the market, right? They didn't tell you how to explore it into a business. You just come up with an idea and that's it. Like, they don't tell you what the next step for commercialization is. And I came up with the idea, I presented it at a symposium, everyone thought it was a good idea, I got like a clap, and then that was it. 2 years passed by, and I don't visit that idea again until I learned about this, like some of the pitch competitions that my university had. And one of the pitch competitions they had was in regards to health, developing products to help in the health space. And I was like, hey, and they were giving you like $1,000. I was like, hey, I have an idea, I can win free money, right? And so I went ahead and I participated in the pitch competition, ended up getting third place. I got $1,000 because you get $500 first with prelims and then $500, and then the first place gets more money. But I was like, oh my gosh, they actually gave me money for an idea I came up with in my head, right? And then I started learning a little bit about entrepreneurship because my school was doing an introduction to entrepreneurship course. I was like, yeah, I'll take the entrepreneurship course. It's a technical elective, why not? I took it, learned what entrepreneurship was. It's like, oh my gosh, this is really cool. I have an idea, went to join the entrepreneurship course club at my university, and they started telling me a little bit more about the pitch competitions, the grants, and the opportunities that the entrepreneurship club provided in regards to funding, resources, mentors. And from there, they basically pushed me into establishing the company. So by 2016, the reason I ended up actually establishing the company was the entrepreneurship program at my university had this grant that they received, and they gave you up to, I think, a little bit over $6,000 per company to work on your idea for the summer. But one of the requirements is that you had to establish yourself as a company. So I was like, okay, sure, I got $6,000 to work an idea for the summer, and I just have to establish a company. It cost me like, I think like less than $100. So I did. And since then, I've been going almost 2 years strong. So it's just kind of like, it wasn't something I tended to do. It was just that the minute I learned about entrepreneurship, I was like, you know what? I'm gonna give it a shot, right? You know, what do I have to lose? You know, I'm not making money right now. I don't have a family. I'm used to living on ramen noodles. So why not, right? So I gave it a shot, and it's been going well so far, right? So you can't miss what you never had in regards to like living the high class life, right? So I'm still struggling. I'm still pushing on, and I enjoy what I do.
Yeah. shout out to UD. I've heard about University of Delaware entrepreneurship program over there, and it sounds pretty awesome.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm curious, Nate, where is your balance, and then also like talk about the struggles as well.
Oh man, so I started my entrepreneurial career when I was 16. I'm 29 now. When I was 25, I was technically homeless. I lived in a warehouse on a mattress with a plastic sheet over it, and 10 feet next to me, excuse me, was my roommate, was a 60-year-old man. And I was the happiest kid alive. I just graduated college, was paying $250 rent, I was going to the gym to take a shower, and you couldn't tell me nothing. I walked through like 50 feet of just darkness every day to get to my room. And the only 2 windows in this 300,000 square foot warehouse. And I'd bring my friends in there and they'd be like, "Are you crazy, kid? This is where you live?" And I'm just like, "Yeah, man, just out here. It's like having a blast, like doing my thing." Fast forward 29. Last year, I broke a threshold and I've sold over the past 5 years over $1 million in creative services, creative marketing services. Right? That doesn't make me a millionaire, but that's something that like my high school friend was like, "Hey, that was one of your dreams when you were in high school, like, make $1 million." Right? So collectively over the past 5 years, I've grossed over $1 million in revenue. And I will say last year was the most depressing year of my life. And I will say that it was a struggle because a lot of my identity was attached to my business. To Amira's point about state and religion, I don't believe in those stark, polarizing differences. I believe that there is a blend between the lifestyles, and I learned it last year very well that there is just expectations that need to be set with the community that you exist in, that you work in, i.e. your employees, and your partners. And so, unless you know what those expectations are, you can't set them. And so last year I learned the hard way that there are definitely boundaries that need to be put in place when you're working with friends and building communities professionally. And that was just a result, literally, of me being an entrepreneur since I was 16. I've never worked in corporate America, so I'm naive to set these expectations, and that's what happened. Right? I would have been in a very sad place, dark place, but also had the most successful year financially and from a business perspective that I've ever had. And so the way in which, I dealt with that was a lot of things. I've always integrated fitness into my lifestyle. Who you surround yourself from a partner perspective. So my girlfriend is definitely like one of my rocks. I don't have like a family that's insanely supportive or they get what I do. I don't think anybody in my family knows what I do, but my little cousin works for me. And that being said, you take, your partner, you take communities, you take mentors. I literally keep 3 or 4 mentors. Real rap. Like I have mentorship, for a CEO. I have mentorship for art direction. I have a CEO for a mentor for just life in general. And then I have communities of peers that support me in all those different realms too. So whenever I feel like there's a challenge and I feel anxious energy, I just go to one of those communities and all those mentors and try to talk to them as best as I can, so they can help me figure out the language in which to encapsulate my issue. So I go out and solve for it. And they may have the answer because they've sold, marketing agency for like $500 million and they've done it before. Or they'd be like, "Hey, read this book." So I've been given advice to read a book. I bought the damn audiobook and I listened to it over the entire weekend. And I was like, "Whoa, I know how to run a company now." like legit run a company. 29 years old, having the most successful year of my life. And I'm like, I know how to run a company now. I've been running a company for years. And so I say all that to say, what Amira referenced earlier about your, state and religion and having your identity separated from your business is definitely important, but know when to combine the two as well. Life is just always balancing, period. There is no reason to be black or white. There's always a need for like this blend. So I constantly am seeking people, seeking community, and seeking knowledge when I deal with the mental and emotional challenges that come with entrepreneurship. But again, when I was living in that warehouse, I would hang on my mentor 3-4 times a week. And it was because I was in this community. It didn't matter how I was living. All that mattered was that I had this community keep pouring into me. and keep investing this knowledge and capacities of entrepreneurship into me. And I was able to look past living in a warehouse, you know, as soon as I graduated college.
I think another thing that's neat to maybe go through your threads as entrepreneurs is, you know, I think I asked you, and I know you have
It's all the same.
that's why I can see one. What has that path, like, you know, journey been like for you as an entrepreneur, and maybe being the only person of color in the space you're in, and then even, I know, you know, you can speak to that in terms of like, the marketing world and the clients you've been able to, and as well for you, Amira, I know that you're now in the Halcyon Fellowship, I believe. I'm curious to learn about what your experience has been like in that space, and where that's, you know, what your vision is there.
Yeah, so actually the in-house residency was for 5 months, and so now it's kind of like just working out the space whenever I go down to DC. And that's been really good, actually. Halcyon has been very diverse, very, very diverse. I think like 50% of the fellows are female, and I think like a little bit over 50 are people of color or from different races. And it's great. It's actually a great environment. Everybody's there to see you succeed. And it's funny because they didn't do that on purpose. Because the way they choose who the fellows are, it's actually a very like basket. It's a very interesting way in which they choose the fellows by going through multiple interviews with multiple people, and just so happens to be that it's very diverse. So that's been good in that aspect. But in regards to like being a woman of color in the medical device space, I mean, I had a lot of support from all the people around me, right? And it's very interesting because I haven't encountered any problem with my race being an issue in regards to my success and me succeeding in the space. Just because, again, being a social entrepreneur and other people, social entrepreneurs in the space, they want to see you succeed. They want to help you. You know, as long as you have a problem you're trying to solve, people want to help you. People want to, you know, hurrah around you and like help push you forward. An example of this is my crowdfunding campaign. So I was trying to raise money to donate 100 of my devices to veterans with amputation, and the first month was very like interesting. I got some momentum, raised about like maybe like $5,000, and I was like, okay, like for my friends and family and some few other people that heard about what I was doing, but I wasn't hitting my goal. My goal was $22,000, and I had a marketing firm to help me with it, and they were not successful. And then one of the alumni from UD heard about what I was doing, and she's like an older lady who's an amputee, found out that she's actually very influential in the Delaware space, and she sends a blasting email to all her friends telling them to donate at least $50 to my campaign, and they pushed my campaign to $11,000. Like, and that's just because people just want to see you succeed. They want to help you, and it doesn't really matter what your color is. Everybody always brings to my attention, like, oh my gosh, you know, you're an African American female, you have all these advantages in regards to grants and government funding, etc. Everyone says that, but I haven't seen anything like that yet, right? It's funny, everyone always says that, but I haven't seen anything like that. Everything has just been like, you're basically being judged in the sense of when I do pitch competitions on the same level as everybody, regardless of what your color is. If you have a good idea, you have a good business plan, nobody sees your color in a sense, right? It's just you have a good business and you're trying to help people and people just want to help you in that. And that's what I've noticed from my experience. Not saying everyone's experience is the same, but I mean, I do notice again that I am a little different, but it hasn't affected, you know, my success or me moving forward in any way.
Yeah, to piggyback on that, I haven't felt, the only times I felt like race was a challenge was when I felt lonely in the level of success I was at. Meaning, I would like to have more Black mentors, right, who have had a certain level of success that I am reading and distilling from some of my mentors that aren't of color. And it feels lonely in that regard. I'll never forget having hit a $500,000 in contracts, and I was just like, whoa, in that space. And I'm like, oh yeah, I got Angela.
Oh my God, hey.
So I hit this mark, and I'm like, well, I was celebrating, and I was by myself, and I went down to a restaurant in Center City, And I walked into this bar, and I just looked around, and I was like, wow, I have nobody to celebrate this with. None of my friends understand what this feels like. I can't like speak to this experience and share it with anyone, and like build. And that was one of those moments for the first time I was like, whoa, this is really lonely being a person of color in this space. But other than that, I just kind of like mob heavy on myself when I'm in a client pitch and it's a $200 million apparel company or it's a nonprofit who barely knows how much it costs to like take a photo. And for me personally, it is something that I don't allow to affect me when I'm in the business space. However, I do take responsibility of it when in the business space. So it's important to me to have representation on my team. So I've had one of the most diverse teams in Philadelphia from a creative agency perspective, like female, people of color, different races and ethnicities. So it's super important for me to have it from a representative perspective, and it kind of happens naturally. But I don't take a kind of underdog perception when I go into meetings that these people are going to be gauging or sizing me up, so to speak, because at the end of the day, I realize that I'm here just to have fun, and you know, going out and go getting a $10,000 project is like now like breathing air. I like talking to my girlfriend, I'm like, hey, I just closed $20,000 in project the past 2 weeks. She's like, what are you talking about? I'm still trying to find a job. I'm like, okay, sorry, I'll shut up. But it's just you redefine what success means and the challenges that live in that space, and you kind of stretch your emotional bandwidth in time, right? So that time of me living in the warehouse, that time of me being challenged to pitch, you know, for a $40,000 project, that's stretching me from a mental capacity to a confident capacity that doesn't allow for race to exist. The emotional issues that I dealt with as a child don't allow for race to keep me down, you know, because that's real drama. Like knowing you're never gonna know your dad, or knowing your mother is never gonna tell you that, you know, she loves you. Like it has nothing to do with color. That's like real trauma, right? And that's deeper for me personally than the color of my skin when I'm in a meeting. That does not take away from the fact that I know who I am and what my identity is, and that I am a man of color, and that it's kind of a responsibility or a duty to again engage youth in the same way that I have been, to ensure that people that have mental illnesses like my mother are respected and have treated with dignity, right? So I take a stand for that stuff. I don't allow for the other things to kind of faze me, because I know if I continue to confidently push through those challenges mentally and emotionally, that I get to continue to take those stands that I do as well. So I don't allow those challenges to outweigh the significance of me pushing through the challenges and becoming more and more impactful in these spaces that we need more representation.
Yeah, I mean, both of you mentioned some very valid things that you want to kind of sit with. I do want to, you know, still honor to the crowd that, like, if you have questions, I have a couple more, and then I'll throw it to you all to kind of pick their brains a little more. I'm curious, because one of the things that people often bring in conversation among entrepreneurship, as far as the struggle aspect, but is, you know, where are you in 5 years, where are you in 10 years? So I guess really the question I have is, like, how far out are you looking? Like, what do you see where it's headed? As like, what's the greater, as much as you want to share with us, you know, I respect like how, like maybe even geographically, is this a thing that stays in Philly or in
Spouse care, anything. I can travel anywhere if I have to go. I just went like to a global entrepreneurship summit in India. I didn't have to ask permission from anybody. I just went, you know, go to incubators in DC, California if I have to. But now that I'm engaged, it's like, okay, I'm gonna be married soon, so I have to like kind of start thinking about all these other things. But for me, like, it's funny because like my fiance really understands like what I'm doing. He understands my dream, my mission. And the other thing is that I'm a serial entrepreneur, serial social entrepreneur. So I already have like 4 other ideas I plan to turn into companies in the next 5 years. Again, why I want to build and sell the current company I'm working on, so I can also invest into the other ideas that I have. But that's basically where I see my future being. It's more in, you know, building more companies, building more startups, focusing on social good. right? And moving forward. And I don't let anything stop me or limit me. I do get a lot of speaking to regards to limitations in probably being like a woman of color. You know, one of the big barriers I face is being a young woman entrepreneur, right? So I just turned 25 actually. But I started this when I believe when I was 20. So, you know, and I'm in the medical device space. So when you go to meetings with like PhDs and like doctors and physicians, and you sit down and you have to explain to them, you know, what your product does, why is it better than what's currently out there that other companies are investing billions of dollars into. You know, it can be very challenging, but again, it's basically what drives me. And I've had a lot more confidence based on my experience, and I understand my market, I understand my people, I understand the problem. And so I'm very confident, like in the next few years, I would be able to really grow the company and move it forward. Either again, get bought out or divert into another market. But that's kind of my big dream and goal where I see myself going the next 6 to 10 years or so.
Super cool. I'm probably like the polar opposite. I'm more of a lifestyle kind of company dude, and I've come to that conclusion because I think this is gonna like lead into your last question about the way you balance yourself. And when I started my career off, I was a graphic designer, and then I went into website development, then I went to social media marketing strategy. So I kind of like worked my way through these different paths that are in this one ecosystem of digital media. And throughout that, all I did was identify things that made me anxious or like I couldn't handle. And I was like, I don't want to do that anymore, right? Like websites. You ask me to do a website, I won't run the other way. Completely the other way. And that's one of those things about balance, right? And understanding what you truly enjoy and what makes you happy. As an entrepreneur, you kind of navigate the scale of your organization to fulfill, you know, what role you actually want to play within it. And so I could have just hired like a CTO or website developer lead to handle that side of my business, but I chose not to. I wanted to continue to like build out the agency and figure out which aspects to scale. And so for me, the size of the business that I've been scaling have been digital marketing and creative. And that's kind of why I've been so successful, is because I've identified the spaces that I want to continue to scale and that make me feel great and feel fulfilled and feel like I have a purpose beyond just like running a company. And the 5-year picture is to live continuously in that fluid capacity, is really understanding like what my heart is telling me to continue to do, what makes me happy, and also who shows up in my life. Right? I'm big on community, I'm massive on community. The only reason I'm this far is that I invest a lot of time and energy into community. I've seen some of you guys had experiences that I've hosted. I'm pretty sure you guys had a great time. And so I live a life that isn't about me. I try to every single day to commit ego suicide. One of my mentors taught me that, is don't make things about you. And so if I continue to do that, that means I'll continue to meet people that I feel like I want to be a platform for. And that's all agency is. The word agency simply means exactly that, like to give agency, to give flexibility or freedom, is to give someone the space to think and do as they please, right? And so if I am an agency owner, my objective should be to identify talent that wants to leverage my platform to maximize their creative output. And so for me, this is a game of what types of content or stories do I want to tell? And how do I want to tell them? And who are the best people to help me process and tell those stories? And who are the best people to execute to tell those stories? And so, am I going to stay in Philadelphia? Sorry, I'm leaving. Moving to Brooklyn soon. And my girlfriend's somewhere at Bedside, Bushwick actually. And my girlfriend's from Germany, and she eventually wants to go back to Germany. And I love her to death, and she's a ride or die. And so I would love to live internationally as well. And so for me, identifying partners locally in Philadelphia that are great creatives, photographers, producers, and filmmakers is important, because I still have a lot of equity in the city. I still have a bunch of relationships in New York that I can maximize as well. And so for me, the ability to create, I can do that anywhere. So when I make my way to, Munich or Berlin, wherever we'll end up, I'll have already built a community there to like land and touch down into, to continue the lifestyle business that I kind of created. And so I'm super intentional and tactful in how I build a community to ensure that I'm able to, maximize and help people that I see are putting out the effort and energy to have a platform like mine to exist within. And so, yeah, for me, if I could get to a place where I could sell the business, would I? Yes, I would. But it'd be terribly challenging given the type of business I have as an agency, because normally when agencies get bought, they buy the talent. And if I get bought, I'm not going to want to, it depends on who buys the company. Probably not going to want to work for them. And so I'm indifferent about that. However, I will say I'll continue to lifestyle and be fluid with how I scale my company. Which some people will be like, that's silly, Nate, but whatever. Not everybody.
Yeah. So final question before I turn it over to sitting here today. What would you leave us with as students? Maybe us sitting in the room and have ideas that we may be sitting on, or have ideas that we're kind of not sure if we should continue with. What is something you would like to hear at this point in your career?
Like recommend?
Yeah.
Well, I just recommend if you have an idea, I think you should pursue it. And I always say this every single time someone asks me for advice for students. You have an idea, you have time, right? Before you go and dive into the real world, you have time to work on that idea, to put, whatever energy you can into trying to make it a reality. I've had people start startups in college and it never followed them out of college. They made a good living in college, right? If you have an idea, work on it. You don't know where it can go. And again, you have all the resources that you need right on the college campus. And just in case you might not be aware, a lot of pitch competitions only want students, right? A lot of the money you could win to work in a company only wants students. They want grad students, and sometimes they want undergrad and grad students. So you have all these resources at your fingertips. While you're a student, use it. And just work on the idea. Don't be afraid to work on it. Even if you think it's a terrible idea, go and speak to the potential end users of your product or service. See if they like it. If you get enough people to tell you yeah, I love it. And if you think you can sell it to all those people that say they love it and still make a living, and that's enough to keep you going, do it. And that's what I would recommend to students, definitely.
Cool. Recommendations. Well, what I recommend. I would recommend so many things I recommend, jeez. The first thing I recommend is find a mentor, someone to aspire to become. This person can be dead or alive, and I would learn everything you could about the person. And when I mean everything you can, I mean why they did what they've done, or what they have done. So what was the influence, the rationale behind their success, whether it's like Albert Einstein and what he invented, or Steve Jobs developing Apple, why did he do that, Because that why is the reason he did it and the reason that motivated him beyond the money. And if you're able to identify the why in your life, what motivates you beyond money, nothing will stop you. Nothing will stop you. And once you identify the why, and you're driven, you have that fire, then I would start to identify what tools can this individual use, what resources that they need, right? What languages that they use, because whatever space you're going into, there's no language, there's a syntax. And the more you learn how to communicate within the syntax, you're able to, again, understand why people use that language, you're able to communicate outside of it. Meaning, you don't come to an interview at Palette Group using buzzwords, but understand what the buzzwords mean. Authentic. However, also come correct and understand that there is language and frameworks that we use to apply to creative and marketing devices and strategies and plans. And so, when you identify the mentor, feel free to continue to hit them up. If it's in books again, if they're available a lot, ask them to set the expectation of hey, can I hit you up? Can we do lunch? Can I text you? Antonio's been in many instances where he's hit me up, and I'm yo, basically I'll get back to you ASAP, but I set that line of communication up very clearly, and we have this expectation that we will connect, and when we connect, it'll be dope. When we want to connect more, we can, whenever that opportunity arises. And so that open line exists. And that being said, find people to create open lines of conversation with, and understand that if you set the expectation and the precedent that you will like to communicate in dialogue, make sure you respect their time and you're doing your own diligence. Like if they ask you to read a book or, you know, do a self-critique, do that self-critique or read that book, because they're probably doing it because they want to see you maximize the time with them. Meaning, you may not be ready for your mentor yet, but he's or she is willing to teach you or help you get the resources for you to wrap your head around language to engage them and be ready for that level of communication. Because that'll help you in the space industry you're in anyway. So I would just recommend mentorship and also community. Like you guys share the space. Shout out to Blackstone. Like find a community in which you can like exist in, where people and your peers are challenging you with the language, right? If you're in the right space with the right people, they should be out learning and growing themselves, so they're coming back to the table and sharing with you. And if you're not a community that's sharing with you, you're in the wrong community. You need a community that's going to share with you, be vulnerable, take the time to learn on their own, and bring it back to you guys and the collective to grow together. And that's kind of how I've grown as well. It's like I have mentors that are friends, and they don't even know it. Like one of my best friends just quit Facebook. She hated working on Facebook. And now she has her life back, and she gets to surf every day and every weekend. And she just lives the most dopest lifestyle I've ever seen. And I'm obsessed with her lifestyle. And I always pick her brain about like how she operates, like what her daily routine is. And you know, it's just a beautiful reciprocal relationship that I've created with her, and we're good friends. Same thing with my mentors too. So don't just look in the real world. There may be someone you can read up in books. There may be YouTube videos you can watch on people. There may be communities you can join to again excel and advance your life and your career from college.
Yeah. So, does anybody open the floor for questions? You want the mic?
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. What do you find the most effective way of like grasping the attention of your market has been? For the both of you.
So basically finding out if you have a market or if people want whatever you're trying to
Like
put out there.
when it comes to launching your product or launching your agency, what did you find was the most effective way of getting the attention of your potential customers?
Ineffective or effective way?
Effective.
Both. Okay.
Sure.
I don't know. Well, I would recommend, so
Effective.
what actually helped me a lot with validating my market was the whole lean startup methodology. You know, basically the first thing you do, and this is what I took out of the whole thing with Steve Blank. You should look it up, the lean startup methodology, Steve Blank. You look at it, watch the video, trust me, it's like all picture, animated, it's the simplest thing to follow, and it helps a lot. And the whole idea is like basically getting out of the building and going to speak to who you think your customers are, right? You have sometimes you think like, oh, my customers are teenagers between the ages of 13 and 16 or whatever. And you go out there and you interview them, tell them like, you start asking them questions that kind of pertain to what you're trying to do, but you don't tell them exactly what you're trying to do. Basically you have hypotheses that you're trying to test, which would validate if what you're doing is worth pursuing, if people actually want it, without really conveying what it is you're trying to do. For example, I'm developing a device to help with phantom limb pain. Before I even started developing the device, I had to go speak to amputees, because that's who I was selling it to, or who I was planning to be my customers. I had to go speak to them to ask, how often do you feel phantom limb pain, right? What product do you currently use? Are they effective? What are the pros and cons? What do you wish you could improve on, right? Because I had an idea of a product I wanted to make, but after I went to interview them, I found that that product I was trying to make was not what they needed. They needed something else, right? So I basically just kind of accumulated all the information I got. I've interviewed over 200 people now, actually. That's a lot of people. But basically took all the information that he gave me to come up with this idea of this final product that I have. What I initially had completely evolved, right? Because if I had just gone to the market with the initial idea I had, which was like a long giant stocking, I would not have a business. Nobody would want what I have. I would have wasted money, resources, and time developing a product or service that nobody wants, right? And that's like what I found it to be most effective, to speak to the people you're trying to get your product or service to. Go meet them in person. Speak to them, right? Learn what their problems are. Learn if the problem you're trying to solve is actually a problem they need solved, right? An example of that would be they I forgot who did this, like I think it was a university or something, some group of nonprofit went to Africa and they were trying to bring water to a village. So they brought a tap, like a borehole thing that you plug the water, and they put it right in the middle of the village. They thought, great, now these people don't have to trek miles and miles away to go fetch water. What they ended up finding out was that, the villagers weren't using the pump that they put there. And the reason why that was because what they found out was that the villagers actually enjoyed the trek. They enjoyed, because that was the time that the women actually get the chance to gossip and talk and, hear the latest news about their neighbors, etc. And they found that putting a pump right in the middle of the town made that not possible, right? So now people can hear what you're talking about. You can't mingle with your girls and gossip anymore. And that was basically their social norm. That was something they enjoyed doing, give them a break from their everyday life. So what they ended up finding out was just giving them a barrel that made it easier for them to transport water from one location to another was all they needed to do, not put a tap in the middle of the town. And that's just kind of an example of you have to go speak to your end users to understand what is it they want, and is what I'm trying to provide them to solve that. And they decide to either perish or pivot.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, she nailed it, and I would definitely recommend that IDEO class again. IDEO classes are built around design thinking, understanding challenges in communities, and framing them to the community to get an understanding of, is the idea that I think is your challenge actually your challenge? And working your way through questions that allow them the space to express themselves so you can identify the overlaps amongst whatever your study case is. So she said 200 people, for example. You're going to go out and figure out if your product is valuable on the market. You just have to be out in the field and talking to people, engaging with people. And I will say, there are ways to do that and cheat, right? You can cheat using social media, you can cheat using digital platforms, but to her point, you have to do it in real time, do it in real life. There's nothing more special than sitting across with someone and creating space for very intimate, vulnerable challenges to be spoken about, like getting water. If they didn't put that pump in the middle of that field, there would have never been dialogue around why. They actually enjoyed the walk, but it took them making the assumption that there was that pump to introduce the idea that these women were actually having very vulnerable conversations with each other, right? And that in itself is a very vulnerable thing to share with the public, because these women, that was their safe space, right? So whatever, a product that exists in the world is, it's very personal. And so whatever you're designing, it should be personal to the community you want to sell it to, so you have to get personal with them to understand how it is valuable to them. For me, it's kind of being in the creative space. It's a bit way different, I think, from the product space. Service space is way different. For me, I'm kind of selling a brand of process. And so I have a very specific process. Are you guys familiar with Virgil Abloh? No idea. His work is cool. It's not oh my god, it's amazing, but it's cool and it's very witty and very edgy in a very simple way. And that's his process. He's developed this process and this brand around this process. I recommend this university talk, this Harvard University talk. He speaks about his process very clearly. He pulls up a slide of his 6 steps in his process. And it's brilliant the way he thinks about design, from an IKEA carpet to Nikes to whatever or whomever brand, consumer brand wants to work with him to collaborate on design. And so he's created a very, very clear brand around it, and he's been selling it crazy. And everybody's been there of we want this process, we want this process. And so he's used his level of influence in his community of influencers, and he's basically introduced his brand and his process to influencers. And those influencers loved it so much that they introduced it to the larger world. And so for him, his go-to-market strategy was, first thing to do a couple things, build a body of work, share with some key people, and see what they think about it. These key influencers that I've built relationships with, and if they like it, then I'll continue to perpetuate it. But I think he worked his way up to be around Harvard grads, to be in a community of sophistication and professionalism, where he could have very clear and sophisticated feedback loop, kind of like Amira as well, in these incubators. And so once you're at a certain level in a community that's like very, very, very professional, and they get their systems and processes, they're able to give you the feedback that you need to really next step your career or professional go-to-market strategy. What I think is you have to work your way up to that community to get that kind of feedback loop. And that's personally the way I do it too, is I create. I have friends who get caught in their head, you met them, and they don't wind up creating stuff. They wind up just being in their head about it. But I'm the opposite. I will create like crazy and distribute it like crazy just to see what sticks. And then whatever sticks, I run with. But that's just my process.
My question is, I guess when it's starting up, how do you determine whether you want to start what you're passionate about fast or slow? Like, say if you, all right, personally for me, I like photography, but I'm still learning, you know, the functions of the camera, how to, you know, determine whether, how to change whether the color of my photos are less red or more red. That was one of the issues I've had today. So my question is, like, when you want to start up your own business or your own professional idea, do you like just try to practice to get to the point where you feel like you can start, or do you just try and start immediately and just get yourself out there?
Yeah, so how do you pace yourself?
It's a great question, and I would, depending on, this is like a really personal question, because I'm gonna look right in your eye. I can't see your eyes, but hopefully you can see mine staring back into yours. Are you ready? That's you, dog. Don't project on me. Are you comfortable lowering your ego to go fast and work for someone to learn what it takes to be a great photographer? Are you willing to go work for someone who has the skill set and the capacity and the talent and to know how much red to introduce, how much contrast to introduce, what tonalities are, how much shadowing you should introduce to a photo in post-production, when you need a reflector, when you don't need a reflector, what a strobe light is, what a continuous light is. Are you feeling overwhelmed yet? If you're not feeling overwhelmed yet, go for it on your own and go study what those things mean and go learn the craft. But if you feel like you're ever getting overwhelmed and anxious, as if this is a lot for you, then I would recommend lowering a bit of your pride and finding someone that could coach you, because photographers always need support and they know the game better than anybody. And so I would recommend either going fast and learning again the language around what you're trying to become a professional at, or taking the more humble approach, the apprentice approach, and finding someone to kind of work with and work under to identify your challenges. Because the other issue with going fast on your own is you don't know that you don't know. And if you don't know that you don't know, any shortcut you take may hinder you in the future when you're trying to be a real professional. So it's good to identify someone who knows all your blind spots and can support you through any challenges that could occur. But if you're willing to take the time to really sit down and learn, read the books, and read about the professional and learn the language it takes to become a professional photographer, I recommend it. But if you feel, again, anxious, overwhelmed, go the apprentice route. There's nothing wrong with that. You can go fast in either direction. You know, pace is relative to what you actually have time for. So that's the third thing, is like, all right, well, what do you actually have time for? Does it make sense with the time you have to go into an apprenticeship program, or does it make sense with the time you have to learn on your own? And just asking yourself, what are you truly willing to do? And no one can answer that question but you.
Definitely agree. I couldn't echo more what you just said. You should definitely, I guess, sit down, list the pros and cons. What are some things that you think you might have to give up to do what you're doing, and are you willing to give those up? And you should definitely find someone who's already doing that, right? And sit with them and ask them some of the questions that, you know, ask them how their experience was, why they started what they were doing, what are some things that they had to give up? You know, what are some sacrifices they had to make, what are some challenges they had to face? And then you have to ask yourself, are you willing to go down that path also, right? And the answer is a definite yes, then go ahead and start doing what you need to do, and depending, the pace and how fast it depends on, your skill set, knowledge you have behind that, who you have surrounding you. So if you always surround yourself with mentors that help make the process a little bit easier, because they've been there, they've done that. So mentors in your space are very, very helpful. And that would usually tell you, are you going to need to move, will you be able to move fast or slow? And just to echo what you said, it basically depends on you. It's a personal question that you would need to answer yourself. But I would definitely recommend finding someone in that space already, sitting down with them, take them for a coffee, dinner, coffee's a lot cheaper, and just sit with them and just speak to them and understand, the path they took, their journey, and see if it's something you're definitely willing to do also.
Thank you.
I want to thank both of you all for allowing me to pick your brains a little bit. Thank you all again for coming out to see what this is about. And I know school maybe want to continue conversations, so if you can say contact info, that'd be awesome. You both have some very great things, and now just chewing on still. I'll probably reach out here soon and ask more questions. But yeah, I appreciate you all being here, and yeah.